Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to the Elitist Geek. VR news for Thursday, September 8th, 2016. Let's get right into it. I hope you guys are having an awesome day. I'm having an absolutely kick-ass day on this sunny with a period of rain Vancouver day. And you know what? I'm okay with that because I'm finding every excuse to not have to interact with the outside world. I am holed up in the man cave right now. I've done my shopping duties earlier today. Been sleeping in super late. I always do that on vacation. In my mind, it's, I'm going to keep waking up at the specific time. Now, I'm one of those weird guys. I've got a body clock that wakes me up. I have an alarm set, but it honestly, I don't use it anymore because my body clock is generally that good. I always wake up 10-15 minutes before the alarm on a work morning, and my body seems to know when it's weekend, but it also knows when it's vacation time. And it's saying, buddy, we need more sleep. You've been skimping on sleep, and it's like it's catching up on sleep, what I call sleep credits. And sure enough, I'm waking up around noon every day on my vacation, which is not like me. Normally, I couldn't sleep in that long if I tried. So obviously, staying up until about 3 a.m. hasn't been helping, but yeah, there you go. So let's get into the news, guys. The folks at Oculus, specifically Jason Rubin, who is the head of content at Oculus, would like us to believe that when history is written, or I guess in this case rewritten, they will not be judged by the debacle gong show that was their supply chain at launch, right? When they basically were back ordered right up through July before they started getting their supply chain in order. He says, no, we apologize for that. It's not how we want it to launch, but ultimately we won't be judged by that. And a step in that direction is ensuring we nail the Oculus Touch launch. So when asked about that, he stated in basically certain terms that the Oculus Touch supply chain is going to go off without a hitch later this year. So, hey, proof will be in the pudding, so to speak. We will find out when the day comes if Jason speaks the truth. And you know what? There's always unforeseen things that could pop up. But let's hope the quote-unquote excuse of specific components in short supply aren't the excuse they use this time around. But I'm genuinely hoping he's right and they get their supply chain in order. Because I really want I want a pair of Oculus Touch day one. I don't want to have to be putting an order in November or whenever they launch and then have to wait till February, right, of the following year. So, speaking of Oculus Touch, specifically, there was a leak today from a German retail website, and the website's called Media Market. I'm going to put up a screenshot, but it basically showed the Rift's availability and its price point. Price point being, as you can see in the picture, 199 euros, which would put it at about 225 US or close to $300 Canadian, which is huge. And I know that's going to shock a lot of people. You know, my guess is they were hoping, and I say they, the people who that's going to shock, price point was going to be 75 to 175. That's kind of the palatable for them price point. Me, I'm unusual in that I was always going to pick it up regardless of what that price point was. And the way I look at it, look, my HyTech X52 Pro cost me $230 plus tax. And it will be used ultimately on far less games than the Oculus Touch will, which will be used for a lot of games, right? So that's kind of how I look at it. And same with a steering wheel. If I want a decent steering wheel, I'm going to be out $200-300. And again, it's going to be for very specific gaming only, just like the HyTech. So I'm personally okay with that price range. I think it's fair, provided that it, ultimately is a controller that's going to have the adoption rate that we want need it to have, so that most of the games moving forward, or I would actually hope all the games moving forward, are compatible with it. We will know soon enough, but it's going to be a day one purchase for me as well. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I was going to do it in the preamble, but completely forgot, was the new Gear VR. I picked it up today. So I went through a bit of a nightmare scenario ordering through Amazon US. They had it listed for $99 because I couldn't find it north of the border, the new one. Best Buy still has the old ones here. My Telus dealer still has the old Gear VRs. So I tried to order it. Anyways, for whatever reason, they returned to sender. So I don't know if they, there was no availability, nobody to sign for it, whatever the hell the reason, I'm getting a refund on that. So I received word of that today because it was taking long. Like, it arrived in the state last week and then for some reason never made it. Every time I would hit tracking, it was just that arrival in Washington state that it would show. So yeah, I set about trying to see if I could find one. First, I was just going to order another one, and then I thought, you know what, give Bell a shot. Bell is one of our telco companies here in Canada, and they had it, so I grabbed it. So that's, yeah, like I said, well, I didn't say, but it was $139 Canadian is what it cost me, so $150 something after taxes. Now, I told you guys, or I urged you to wait before putting the Note 7 in. I'm going to do that myself, as tempting as it frickin' is. I've got both here. You got the voice in your head saying, what's the likelihood of something going wrong? I just don't want to tempt fate, because my relationship with Murphy, as you guys know, he's kicked me in the nards one too many times when I get greedy or too ambitious. So I'm going to simmer down, gear down my big rig, and not put the phone in this as much as I want to. So hopefully my Telus supplier is going to get, who's the telco that I deal with, the replacement Note 7 later this week, and I can let you guys know how I find the new Gear VR. What I can tell you is, just holding it up to my face, is that it is indeed way more comfortable. I thought it would be slightly more comfortable, but it's actually way more comfortable with this new material that they have. It's actually very nice, the fit. It feels better. Like, the Rift should seriously be using this, which reminds me, I still haven't put the cover order in for my Rift. But there you go. That's the Gear VR. So maybe 3-4 days. That's what I'm hoping we get that replacement phone. Next story has to do with Emteq, a company like another one's, and I believe it was in July, early July, I reported on a company called Viso. They'd done crowdfunding to create an HMD that allowed for facial recognition, so face tracking. Well, unfortunately, they were not able to raise the funds required, so they've had to cancel that project. But no fear, in steps Emteq, and they're hoping to do the same thing. So what they've got is a SDK that they're calling FaceTeq, FaceTeq, which is their tracking. And apparently this will be able to interface with existing HMDs like the Rift, using a variety of sensors that they're going to add onto the existing devices. And it's going to do stuff like measure your heart rate, check your eyes, facial muscles. It sounds pretty intense. And there's a quote from Graham Cox, who's CEO and one of the co-founders of Emteq, and he says, and I'm quoting here, "Imagine playing an immersive role-playing game where you need to emotionally engage with a character to progress. With our technology, that is possible. It literally enables your computer to know when you are having a bad day or when you are tired." And I don't mind that as a play element, but something like that, my opinion is, it should always be a choice, something you can disable through the game. And the reason I say that is facial expressions vary from person to person. I'm someone who's done stage acting. I like being in front of a camera. I got no problems with that. Showing different emotions, also no issue with that. The problem is, not everybody can do that. Some people, clearly, you can tell on their faces they're pissed off, and no amount of pretend is going to make them look not pissed off. My wife is a perfect example of that. I can always tell just by looking at her exactly what emotion state she's in, right? And that would just drive people bonkers. You know, you've got to get hyped at this part in the game. You've got to be excited to meet this NPC. And for the life of you, you cannot muster the enthusiasm. Your acting may suck, whatever. You may be somebody who has a horrible poker face. Whatever the reason, I see this working only as an option as opposed to... Now, granted, they could come up with all kinds of, lie detector type programs, whether it's law enforcement, fine. That can be kind of an offshoot. But for the gaming public at large and in general, that's got to be an option. That can't be, this is the only way you can play through the game. And I don't think for 1 second that's what their intention was, but they don't specify it in the article either. So hopefully that's the angle that they were going to do with this all along. I love the concept. I love having that as an option, as a choice, but I wouldn't want to be have that mandated to me, right? I'm not sure what your guys' thoughts are on that, but I imagine it's going to range from could care less to, agree with me, or the exact opposite. Hell no, right? Next up, we have a game that looks to be pretty damn intense, and it's called Earthbound. Now, I think I mentioned it on my channel before that when I was a kid, I was convinced that around now we would have space stations, we would have space cadets patrolling the lanes between the moon bases, the space stations, and planet Earth. And I was going to be one of those space cadets. Space cadet as in, military law enforcement style, not as in I've lost my marbles. So you can imagine my disappointment when we hit all these milestones. 2001, and doesn't look anything like the movie. 2010, nothing like the movie. In fact, we seem to have gone backwards in space. We have the ISS, but that is our only permanently manned orbiting platform, which sucks. Hopefully that gets better in time and we have a greater presence. But this game, called Earthbound, sees you in the role of a spacecraft. You're piloting a spacecraft that's hurtling towards Earth, only it isn't doing so as a standard maneuver. It's basically because your ship's engine has died, locked up, whatever the reason is that's going to be part of the plot, you've got to fix it before you literally crash into Earth, burn up, and die. So that sounds really, really cool to me. I love that kind of play style. There was one RPG back in the 80s called Questron, and Questron to this day is still my favorite RPG ending of all time, because what would happen is when you were about to encounter, the big bad guy to do your epic square off with him, there was this alarm pitch, and it would get faster and louder, and it put you into such a state of stress and anxiety. I have not to date had a more satisfying game ending than good old Questron in the early 80s. That game was just amazing for that. So I kind of like that. Now, one thing I never determined in Questron or my buddies is if you just sat and waited, would it eventually tick to a point where the game would end, right? We don't know. You never wanted to find out. You just wanted to finish it. So hurtling towards Earth in space is right down my alley. This should be a lot of fun. Hopefully it's a game with some meat to it. And, the puzzles are involved and take at least a few hours, not minutes. Again, no word of that in the article. Again, yeah, me being a little pessimistic with all these short experiences that we've been having. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully it's a bit more full length. We will know October 1st when it launches. And just one thing to add, the creator, Victor Oman, he's a 9-year 3D artist veteran in the game industry. He's worked on a lot of other games. He is the sole developer of this title, and he's using the Unreal Engine 4. And he started using that just basically for the game right after they had announced additional VR support. And the screenshots look gorgeous. It looks very polished. Him being a 3D artist helps, But yeah, it looks really, really good. So check that out. Link will be below. Speaking of space, NASA specifically is teaming up with a company whose gloves I featured on the channel here as a news piece, Manus VR glove. NASA's teaming up with these guys to basically create mixed reality programs that they can use to train astronauts. Now, to date, a lot of the training that happens takes place underwater. Underwater, while not, you know, doing a perfect representation of zero-G, because there's no zero-G underwater. It's still a closer approximation than doing your training in an empty swimming pool, right? You've at least got more of a flotation aspect, and they do the suits in such a way that you don't sink, you don't rise, you're kind of neutral. So it's a good approximation. Well, now all those other tasks, they're going to be able to literally, through VR, create a recreation maybe of something like the Hubble, you know, or some other satellite, down accuracy to the component level where an astronaut can actually do that training. What an awesome, cool idea. I mentioned that just for that reason. Being a big space geek, I love hearing about stuff like that. Next up, we have just a general article from Upload VR talking about the veteran companies in the video effects industry. And that includes companies like Industrial Light and Magic, whom we know from Lucasfilm, LucasArts, the gaming wing, have done incredible things in the area of special effects. And Tim Alexander, who's one of the employees at Industrial Light and Magic, he sees the challenges of VR being very similar to the challenges that they faced early on in the video effects game. He sees a lot of parallels with virtual reality and says that that puts them in a really good position relative to a lot of other kind of newbie companies, in that they have experience in overcoming those challenges, hurdles, issues, whatever you want to call them. And hopefully they're right, because having the VR backing of companies like ILM is huge for VR. Who knows what kind of tools, what kind of things that they can come out with that could benefit VR at large. So really keen on following that moving forward. Hopefully that's going to turn into some amazing content for virtual reality. And then the last story I thought was really cool because, surprise, surprise, one of the other things, in addition to being, you know, amateur astronomer, a guitar kind of guy who's learning how to play guitar late in life, gaming geek at large, I've also always been a comic geek and cut my teeth on the original Conan the Barbarian, Savage Sword of Conan, easily my favorite fantasy comics of all time, hands down. We received word from Upload VR that we have now the world's first VR comic. And of course, I hate saying that because pretty much anything you do in VR is going to be a first because it's new, right? It makes sense. But what I like about this, and check out the link below, is the way they've arranged the comic panels, literally in stereoscopic VR. So you're able to read the panels, not just have them kind of be three-dimensional in front of you, but rotating will take you from panel to panel. So the screenshot in the video below shows literally 4 panels, one in each direction. And the idea is that you just rotate. And as you're rotating, the panels are advancing, which, wow, talk about a cool way. As long as you don't spin too fast and get dizzy, doing it slowly, reading the panels, not a bad thing. Again, doesn't bother me. I'm not susceptible to that. But people who are, you want to proceed at a certain pace, right? But it looks very cool. And this first comic is called Magnetic or Magnetique. You know, it looks like kind of the French Q-U-E at the end. So it's one of those pronunciations. But yeah, the world's first VR comic. Check that out. Looks pretty cool. Available for the Gear VR now via the Oculus store. Hopefully other platforms moving forward. I know that Marvel's looking into VR stuff. DC is looking into it. And some of the other indie comics as well. So some cool things on the horizon for those of you like me that enjoy comics. All right, guys, that's it for the news. Off to other fun stuff for me. As always, cheers, guys, and definitely catch you on the VR flip side.